Hello and welcome to the Thread to Mend podcast. My name is Taylor and this is a fiber podcast that I record here in Baltimore, Maryland. I took a couple weeks off recording. I was working diligently on my Sea of Stockinette, Ola Yoke, Jamieson and Smith Shetland 2-ply fingering weight yarn sweater, and I thought this is just not a lot to say. I did record a podcast and I didn't upload it. I did upload it. I didn't post it, and I actually deleted it because I just felt like I was recording for the sake of recording and not for the sake of having anything to share. So, and that day in particular, I think I attempted like 5 times. Like once was in slow motion on accident, and I was just like, Mercury's in retrograde. This is a great time to just shut myself off and focus on living. So I've been doing that, and I've been doing a lot. Let's just get into it. I feel like this is very poor taste, using my Starbucks mug, but it was given to me by a student I adore, and it has cats and yarn on it, so it's also the biggest mug that I own. And when it's clean, I go for that one first. Okay, here is the progress update on my Ola Yoke sweater. In my project bag, or actually wherever I keep sort of a contained pile of notions to grab from, I have this little zipper guy that I got from Anthropology with a gift card. As a gift, and he holds on to all my waste yarn and my little end guys to my interchangeable circulars, so that if I ever need to, split for sleeves, this is where I find my waste yarn, so I can just throw that anywhere. I have finished both sleeves, and here they are. I still have the needles in this one. I thought I put it on waste yarn already, but I figured, I don't need the needles again. So 2 sleeves finished, and I have the whole body of stockinette. And there's a couple stitch markers here. So this marker, if you can see that, is where I was when I last showed you, where I was on the sweater, and I think I had maybe just started the second sleeve. So I finished that, and I worked up through here, and then I placed a marker for where I began last night, and I just knit a few rows. I'm at the point now where the pattern says knit to X number of inches, and the size extra small and small. I'm kind of between sizes, and I don't know if I want this sweater to be very long, that like I only feel comfortable wearing with jeans, or if I want it to be kind of like mid-length, not quite cropped, but not kind of like, it's tough because I want my sweaters to always meet and extend beyond the top of my jeans, but that often makes it a little too casual looking to wear with a skirt. So I'm at the point where I'm thinking, do I want to knit the length of the extra small, but have a small size, width and shoulder situation, or do I want to knit a actual size small? So I'm right now I had stopped, and I was like, nah, I'm gonna keep going, and I think I'm just gonna go halfway between them. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to measure the length of a sweater when you're knitting it, because like, do you block it and then measure it? Do you just like lay it over your leg? Do you have to like press it flat, and do you stretch it? Like, I don't know. So, and that can make, the difference of like 1/4 of an inch or so, depending on how you lay it out. So, this I'm not dispassionate about working on, but I feel like I've reached a point where I'm close enough to kind of the end progress that I want to cast on new things so that I don't feel stuck. not knowing what to cast on when this is finished. And I know that I'm getting to the point now too where it's going to be, there's going to be like decreases and color work. So I want to cast on another project that is interesting, but also sort of mindless. At the same time that I was knitting a lot of mindless stockinette in the round, I was also working on a pair of socks that I had sort of in hibernation. Before I get into those, this project bag is one that I sewed a few weeks ago. I haven't shown it to you yet, but it is a drawstring bag that I used all kinds of materials in my sewing stash. So the outer fabric is a linen table runner fabric by the yard that you can buy at IKEA. I bought that like at least 8 years ago, so I don't know that they still sell the same thing or anything similar, but this lace I bought from organiccottonsupply.com or something, one of those major organic cotton websites. The gingham, I can't remember where that came from, but it's been in my stash for a while, and it's like a very loose woven fabric. I don't know what the technical name for that type of fabric is, but it's like a muslin gingham. And I used that to line the inside. And one thing I did do in this project is I added 4 interior pockets, 2 major ones on each side that are split, and I won't do that again. It's just too frumpy of a bag. A bag with structure should have interior pockets, but a bag without structure, it really kind of just gets in the way. It feels unnecessary. It's just extra. So you can see that I can easily fit a sweater in here, and it's not a giant bag that is like very structured and hard to kind of throw into other bags. I like how it almost sort of like collapses on itself because it does carry a whole lot. What else I have in here? Oh, so I only carry in my project bags the notions I need, and one is a darning needle for carrying waste yarn to split for the sleeves, and then my Jamieson & Smith measuring tape to check on the length of that sweater. So I kind of like that there are pockets to put those small notions in, but I just don't trust that they're gonna like stay there because they're a bit floppy. I think smaller interior pockets that don't take up the whole width of the bag might be better. I don't know. And this is one of the first few project bags that I'm putting my little branded twill tape on, and I used a pin to hold it in place, and when I removed it, it left this bit of a mark. So I'm like really bummed out about that, but I guess I wonder what people use to keep everything straight when you're sewing it. Maybe it's easier to keep it straight when it's just held in place manually, because I feel like maybe the pin pushed it out of alignment and it's a bit crooked. So I really like this bag the more I use it. I think it's aesthetically adorable. There are aspects about it that I know are imperfect, and so I would never sell this bag online. Like, for instance, this really lightweight, what do you call this, ribbon. I originally bought many years ago from Pearl Soho's website. I had previously like cut it into 2 uneven lengths, and I needed more length on both sides, kind of, and like just put little extra bits to extend them longer as you pull them closed. So, I mean, yeah. And then everything about the sort of drawstring aspect, I kind of goofed up a little bit. Like this seam here, and I'm just showing you this because this is my learning experience. I don't do everything the first time right. I just, learn to figure it out as I go. So I did use a tutorial video on YouTube, and I think the video that I ended up really using as a basis for this project, which I didn't do completely the same. I think that I just chose my own random dimensions, or not semi-random dimensions. I I kind of used the same ratios for lengths, but I didn't do exactly what this video told me to. One thing it did do is use fabric glue rather than sewing a seam here, and I didn't have fabric glue, so I didn't use it, but I also didn't sew a seam. So as I use this drawstring, tons of little woven thready things are popping out, and I think maybe too it's possible that in the tutorial it had you do a top stitch here to kind of separate the drawstring zone from the rest of the bag, and I didn't do that, but what I did do so that the drawstring doesn't just fall into the inside of the bag between the two fabrics was I sewed just a very small, maybe 2-inch area of a top stitch there between the lace and the main fabric that you probably, no, I can't even really see on either side. My seams are really not great. There's still tiny loose ends to trim. But that keeps the drawstring in the top, but it also gives it a nice kind of relaxed look. It's not like, again, it's not at all structured, which I think works really nice with this super lightweight fabric. This little stitch marker here in the end is one that I just assembled recently from an order on Etsy. You can find these tiny little tassels on there, probably multiple stores, but I've always used brass stitch markers for my homemade ones, and I bought gold because I have a few zippers with gold zippers and I wanted them to match, and I just thought these were too cute. So if I make bags to sell online, I'll probably attach a free little stitch marker that goes with it, and it might be one of these. My sweater had another Project Keeper on it that I also made, and I have a few more of those, not as many, but it's like a much bigger tassel. It's not as big as it might look or as small as it might look. These ones are teeny tiny. These would be really good for socks or any project where maybe you're using like multiple markers. Or like a really good beginning of row stitch marker. So that's my recent work. I've also been knitting on a pair of socks. These have been on my needles for a bit of time. They're not a priority project. They're a background project when I just need something. And so for a while I've been at the heel, turning the heel for the first one, and I switched from my 9-inch circulars to DPN, so as soon as I get to the heel of the first sock, I cast on the second sock until I get to the heel, and I'm right about at the row where I would split for the heel. I think that I was maybe trying on the first sock a bunch and sort of like mildly stretching it out, and I haven't really done that at all with the second sock, so I don't know if I've counted the rows, and I think that I'm at exactly the right row length to split for the heel, but I just can't even believe it. I'm just like, oh, now I have to do both heels, which is not something I've done. I haven't done this kind of heel ever before, and so I'm learning it for the first time, and I'm happy that I'll have an opportunity to sort of fiddle with it and figure out its construction, and then immediately do it a second time to kind of ingrain what I just learned. It's like when you're in math class and you do the project kind of or you do the problem solving with your teacher on a board, and then you sit down and do it again on your own without as much interaction. So those, I hope to turn the heel on these. It probably won't happen until I have a good chunk of time on the couch or in a chair, because I can't imagine learning that skill outside the house. So those are the two things I'm knitting on right now. I still have a couple projects on the needles, like my brioche shawl. I forget the name, but I've talked about it in the past. One other thing that I made real quick, I'll just show you, is I sewed a pillow form and stuffed it with all of my waste wool from spinning from a fleece. So I've had like three grocery bags full of waste wool from a couple, well, mostly one fleece that I've been preparing that I've dyed in different batches. And so you can probably see through this very light fabric that there's like different colors of wool inside. I haven't even hand sewn the bottom of it yet because I kind of didn't want to press the finish button until I've sort of thought more about this and felt it and squished it. Maybe even, I don't know, maybe I'll even make the form first so that, or the cover for it before I close it up, because, you know, I want to know that it's going to wear in well. I'm already noticing that the corners, like this left corner, I didn't quite press and push the wool deep enough into as much as the other side. So I just want to, you know, make this as well as I can, and so I'm not really closing it up until I feel like that's done. And also, as soon as I pushed all my waste yarn into this container, I have more. So it's kind of like a work in progress, I guess, because it's truly not completed till I've knit a pillow form cover for decor. It's hard to choose, like, what yarn am I choosing not to wear and what yarn am I don't know, maybe it would be a good project for, I mean, you can make a ton of different pillow covers. You don't even have to use like the first one you make. If you're using deep stash yarn that you have no idea what to use for in the future. So perhaps I will experiment with stitch patterns with, I don't know, we'll see. I always want to lean towards color work because that's the most interesting and exploratory. Like, it's like drawing with yarn. It's like drawing with stitches, not even yarn. I have one more acquisition, which, I mean, is kind of probably going to be a surprise that I don't already own this. I've checked this book out of the library as long as I possibly could, 2 separate times. And recently I was like, shucks, I want to read that bit about this in that book. And I couldn't because I was like, how many times am I going to go to the library just to get this book? So I just bought it because I was in a mood to buy things. I bought a lot of stuff recently. Not like crazy, but I feel like I manage being a responsible human being by just not buying things a lot of the time. But anyway, if you're not familiar with this book, I can't remember what it was. I should have written down what it was that I wanted to look up when I purchased it because I can't remember now that it's arrived. But this book is an amazing resource for breed-specific yarn lovers, or like just wanting to know like what it really deepens your knowledge of knitting and yarn, knowing like how different things kind of operate or how like what they want to be. Like for instance, the first fleece I ever bought was a Cordale fleece, and I bought it because it was bouncy, it felt soft. I think technically it was a medium wool, so it wasn't fine wool, which can be a little, to newbies, be a little more challenging to process. But now that I kind of have read about long wools and I've read about merinos, I kind of know and understand how a Cordale fleece, which is a Cordale sheep, is sort of a hybrid of a long wool, the Leicester long wool, and I think merino. I hope I'm not messing that up. This is my, like, from the first time I checked out this book, what I remember learning, because that was when I was new to spinning Cordale, and I can totally understand how the kind of binding of their genetics produces, a medium weight sort of fiber that is really long and sturdy, but not coarse and woolly, more fine, but not quite fine because it's sturdy. And so it just really kind of intellectually helped me grapple the minutia of wool grading and processing, and things like luster and the drape of different breed yarns. And anyway, obviously, I checked out every book on spinning from the library that is available. Like, they had all the ones I've seen in other spinning sources, and this one was just beyond my favorite. This one was the one book I would add to my tiny library if I felt like I needed source material for greater knowledge. Because spinning, it's an experiential learning for me. So, I could read people's ideas about how to execute something, but until I've done it, I don't know how it's done. It's like so I really like that. And I have another acquisition. So I went this past weekend to Frederick with my husband. I said, "Hey B, would you like to go to Frederick and bring Shippy and go to the yarn store and then hike all afternoon?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we got up kind of early on a Saturday, and I tried to get in the car by 8 a.m. Of course, it didn't happen, but drove to Frederick, parked right outside the shop because most shops don't open till 11, but it was a special event because Caitlin Hunter was there with a kind of it wasn't a trunk show. She's teaching workshops, which I knew were happening months ago, but I always kind of don't schedule things outside of the yoga studio on weekends because I don't know what might happen and why I might need. Anyway, I didn't sign up, and on their Instagram they were like, Caitlin Hunter's gonna be meet and greet at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and I thought, I can do that. I want to meet this amazing person that's done amazing things, and just I didn't realize that all of her knitted things would be there and I could see them and touch them. And I wish in retrospect that I paid more attention to a lot of the samples in the room because I was so overwhelmed by the beautiful yarn. The Knot House has the best curation of a yarn store ever. It's clean. It's not cluttered. It is obviously their inventory moves because there's not random they do a really good job at merchandising the kind of the remnants of what once was a new order from a supplier. They just merchandise really well, and they make you want to buy all the things. And I practiced extreme control on my spending that morning. I think we parked at 9:45 or something, and I was like, I'll be done at 10. And he walked the dog. There's a beautiful canal, and it's a really scenic little downtown area to walk your dog on a Saturday morning. So he was fine. He had fun, but they were ready to get a drink of water and back in the car by the time I finished. I think I went over 15 minutes by at least 25 minutes in the store because I knew that if I checked out at 15 minutes in, I would have spent as much money as I anticipate spending at Maryland Sheep and Wool, which is a month away, and I can't do that to myself. So I bought the one thing that I remember seeing the last time I was there that I regretted not buying. And I have no idea what I'm going to make with it. It's the most expensive skein of yarn I've bought, but I've spent close to that much money on. No, it's not even true. It's Kashgora. It's whatever. It's not it's not even cashmere, and I paid $40 a skein. Just kidding. But anyway, I'm talking about this. It is so this is what's interesting. I don't know the story behind this batch of yarn. It has the Spin Cycle Yarns logo. It doesn't say Spin Cycles Yarn. It is very clearly a worsted spun 2-ply yarn that is grown and milled in the USA. That's one thing it tells you. It says it's sport weight, 400 yards, 100% merino wool. And the thing that I really like about this yarn is that it has a very tight twist. It's not as, it's which probably makes it a little more dense and a little kind of, I don't know, it's kind of this beautiful combination of what my over twisted hand spun yarn looks like and what what a well done commercial spun 100% merino, well, this is merino targhee, but targhee is what gives the color. It's mostly merino yarn. It's just kind of right in the middle. And this is not a 2-ply up top. This is at least a 3-ply. The bottom one is also a 2-ply. But I just really liked this yarn. I like that it's undyed. It gives it kind of just an interesting soft heather kind of depth to it. And I couldn't, obviously, when I left the store and went home and regretted not buying this, I forgot what it cost. But because it was still there when I went back, I said, I'm buying a skein of this now. And although I'd love to buy a sweater quantity, I don't even know I don't have the sweater in mind for that. And I can't buy, sport is not that far off from fingering weight. So I kind of have some like sport fingering weight sweaters like in the mix right now. So yeah, I had to say no to the sweater quantity. Also, $120 for like form-fitting sweater is not what I'm just not in that bracket of consumerism yet. I'd love to be. Like, that's an aspirational goal. I think most people want to, whatever. But yeah, so I bought this, and I bought a gleaner, which I left upstairs, but I'll grab and show you. And I also got this shawl pin that's in my hair. And I have no idea if you can see that, but it's the shawl pin that is of a sheep's head, which I have seen on the Spin Cycle Yarns website, and I really wanted to buy, but because I'm really good at talking myself out of spending too much, I then can no longer justify paying to ship things to myself, so I just close the website and buy nothing. That's like my strategy. I'm sorry that I'm on the internet encouraging people to not shop because I want to support everybody, but I'm also, a millennial, which is such a negatively charged term, but I graduated from college and was looking for a job at the start of a huge recession. So I think that millennials get a bad rap. Like the last 10 years, we've been working jobs that we're overqualified for, and we're not making the money that you all, that we all like thought would be available or whatever. So anyway, I'm frugal. I'm a little frugal. I'm not like saving every scrap of fiber, although I do kind of do that. But I don't do it because I need to. I do it because I think I want to. So I bought one skein and I bought some tools. I also got, I don't know if I brought that down here. All right, I'm going to go get my gleaner and get the other thing. I'll be right back. Okay, so when I got to the checkout counter at the Knot House, I just adore the owners of that shop so much. Like, I want to just know them and hang out with them and work for them. I want to be like, yeah, your idea of executing that is great. Let me do it for you. But anyway, I was at the checkout counter and I was like looking at all the things. I couldn't even take it all in because I was thinking I would just buy some like notion-y things anyway, and so one thing I got was the Clover darning needles, but these ones are like a smaller size than the ones I already own. I know one of them is the size 15, which is pretty small, and I don't know how often I'm going to use this size, but the other two are more like the size I was looking for, which are still smaller than what I already own, and I think I'm going to appreciate having this when I start weaving in ends to my 2-ply fingering weight sweater, because I noticed that the other darning needles I have are just a bit oversized for that small of a kind of stitch turn thing. And I really like the bent tip to the Clover needles. I have a couple that are bigger and they're like a gold color. They came in a blue little holder that my dog chewed up. So I'm going to intentionally try to keep this out of her. She doesn't really ever chew things unless she thinks that they're her toy. Like, this is fun. She just thought that was a thing for her. I don't know what she was thinking. And then I also bought a gleaner because I have a couple sweaters now that I've been wearing and they're a little worse for wear. In fact, the one that's the most is the one I'm wearing now, which maybe I'll do like a live gleaner first impression. Well, my first impression is that it came in a plasticky little drawstring bag, and so I was like, do you have gleaners? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll buy the large one. And kind of pulled that out, looked at it, and it's like, what's that there? They're like, that's a small one. I was like, oh, I think I'll trade it for that. And it was like only $13, which I guess I thought it would cost more than that. And if you think about it, like, it's totally like, I'm glad I paid $13. Not that there's nothing wrong with this. It's just that it's like, you know, plastic. Like, it's gonna wear out in my lifetime. You know, $13. It's not a bad price. I guess maybe I'd like to know what using the larger one is like, but I liked how contained this thing is. So it also has that little, like, before we were like way deep into single-use consumer products like lint rollers, I grew up with having a lint brush that was like a reusable lint roller, and I'm so glad I have one back in my life. I haven't used it yet, but I'm gonna. And then when you open this up, let's see, I just did it. You have 3 different gleaner tools. So there's like a super rough one, which you would use on like really sturdy wool fabrics, like a wool coat or something that might have pilling. You have a super duper fine one, which I haven't used, obviously, but the woman told me she rarely uses that one. I would use it on really delicate things, like maybe cashmere. And she mentioned that too, now I think about it. And then she had mentioned that the middle grade one is what she probably uses the most. And it looks like you just want to go in the direction, you know, the same direction as the knitting. So, yeah, let's see. Let's clean the sweater. Probably don't want to glean it. Well, I wonder if it's easier to glean on or off. This is like super grabby. Also, this sweater has a lot of texture. Maybe I should switch to the finer one because it's like, this is nothing like brushing a cat. I feel like as much as it's getting rid of the pearls, it's making it fuzzier. Maybe I'll just glean one side. Well, it's definitely way more efficient than manually picking it off. I feel like I'm getting like little nubs in the making that are far less obvious than the major ones. Cool. Anyway, I wanted to breathe a little bit of life back into my old sweaters rather than just like buying and knitting more sweaters. I want to knit Brian a sweater, which means I have to keep him in mind when I buy yarn, and I really should find a pattern and find out the yardage I will need so I can buy the right amount, and I should consider him when I'm thinking of purchasing a sweater quantity. Maybe we can figure that out before Maryland Sheep Wool in a month or so. Okay, so I spent just a few moments on one sleeve. This is a bit addicting. I could keep going. All right. You can tell that I got some off that I just haven't unstuck. Yeah, nice. Okay, so there's that versus I have like some kind of seed on my sweater. Also kind of gets the cat hair off too. Anyway, thanks for watching that. Yeah, so I just have like knitwear tools now, which is fun. It's like knitting is my lifestyle. I have to have special life tools to maintain it. Oh, I spun yarn too. So I previously showed you, I'll just get it out. Previously shown you a skein of yarn that I spun from a fleece. This was the parts of black and white mixed fiber that I spun into a kind of worsted weight 2-ply. It's gorge AF. Oh my god, have you seen Queer Eye? That show is so good. It's just dismantling toxic masculinity and self-hatred one person at a time. Alright, so this is what I just spun, and I'll tell you why I love it and what I need to figure out. So I love that it is seemingly close to the same weight as this. It looks like a little over spun and a little over plied. I obviously took a break between them, so I don't know what I was thinking. And it's a tiny bit, well, I don't know. But one thing about this fleece is that I didn't buy this fleece because of the quality of the white fiber. I bought this fleece because it was a mixture of colors, and I appreciated that. So that's what gave me such a rad, like, mixed multi-random skein. And so that is why I'm happy. The worst valued, the parts of the fleece that were less desirable were that the white areas were not pure white at all. They were this like creamy, some parts were like yellow and some parts were white. And I could have just gotten rid of the yellow parts, or I could have, I don't know, processed them completely separately. But what I ended up doing was just combing it all out and realizing that some of my nests of fiber were much creamier than the others. And so I just reached for them first when I started spinning. And then I left a nest or two that were also kind of overly creamy. And I spun those first when I began my second bobbin to ply together. So that when I got to the end of my 2 bobbins, I was plying cream on cream so that the majority of the spin would be white on white. So I'm thinking that I kind of filled to capacity my bobbin plying this and continued to spin again, and this is where I finished. So this skein has kind of more creaminess quality to it. And I can't tell if when it's knit, it's gonna like create kind of a fade, or if it's going to be like yellow and then white and have like a line. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep this white or not. I'm a little intimidated to dye my own handspun because I could easily make it ugly. But I mean, what if I just got my favorite like color and just found a way to dye it my favorite color? Like, I don't know how that could be bad. Rather than like trying to do speckles or something. I mean, speckles really translate to superwash wool. I mean, that's their medium. That's their canvas that speckles do. I don't think speckles are going to do my like rustic handspun from a fleece. I'll be right back. So I mentioned that Caitlin Hunter was at the Knot House when I went to that shop, and I don't really know what else I can say except she's very lovely. In retrospect, I had an awesome day. We went to the yarn store, we hung out with the dog, we hiked outside in the most glorious weather. So I wouldn't change a single thing about that day. But the next time she's teaching workshops in town, I'm going to take one of her workshops. Her and I talked a little bit about how she went to school for design. She worked in design before like designing knitwear. And I just think that is awesome. I'm just glad, the more I know like about all this, the better. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just rambling. But she was great. And I will take workshops in the future. I want to do knitting workshops. It's just, when I sign up for yoga workshops, it's because I see in the roster, like Maggins is going to be there, or like Heather's teaching it. And like, I want to like be with the people that I know. But when it comes to knitting workshops, like, the designer is the only person you are aware of, and you don't know like if they're nice or not. I mean, of course they're nice, but like, I don't know. I just have anxiety, I guess, around like people. And so to pay a lot of money to spend time with people, I'm like, don't know if I'm going to do that unless I already know them and I'm like comfortable with them. But I'll do that now. I feel like I should learn knitting stuff from experts. That's a worthy investment. And I've just never been like, I think spending the day in a workshop sounds like a lot of fun. You probably take a break, you can like be on your own for a moment. But a lot of like, I just find that the workshops that are part of festivals to be overwhelming because it's like there's so much to do. Oh, I have another project. I almost forgot that I have 2 other knitting projects that I'm working on. I had both of these shoved into the bottom of my backpack because today is Tuesday, and throughout my week I carry knitting projects along with me as if I actually had time to knit on them. I think it's just a safety blanket, like a comfort thing. It's like my baby blanket, like keeping my knitting around. Helps me feel more secure. So I'll just show you the progress I made on those. This is, last time I showed you the sock, I was still on the ribbing, but I've made it to the calf. I think I'm knitting, let me just count them really quick. I'm knitting 64 stitches on US zeros, and US zeros are really like the size needle. I want to knit that 4-ply fingering weight, super, that fingering weight speckle yarn that's like has no elasticity to it. I love the feel of this fabric. At the same time, okay, so I've knit a few pairs of socks, like 2. None of them have been on this gauge of needle or been this, well, this time I knit this kind of yarn once before on a larger gauge, which I wasn't a super fan of. And I did knit more stitches in the round than that other sock. But there's 2 things. One, I'm afraid that this is not wide enough or elastic enough. But I know that when I start to wear my hand knit socks, they stretch out. So I'm trusting that when I continue knitting 64 inches on size 0s with this yarn, that my gauge is not going to be so tight that it won't fit. I know it fits over my heel because I tested it out. I literally just let my stitches, I'm so silly. I didn't even take them onto waste yarn to do it. I just was like, oh no, what if it doesn't fit? And like threw it on my foot to make sure it does. And then spent like 30 minutes picking up all those stitches that I dropped like 3 rows deep, which is just impulsive. And I think I don't know, there might have been an imperfection made with a drop stitch somewhere back there. But not drop stitch, but like one of the rows I didn't pick up, I think. I can't even find it. So this yarn is knitting up pretty interesting. I love that it looks almost like it's striped, but it's not. It seems like those stripes across are like pretty consistent. There's always 4 rows of there's almost always 4 rows between the stripes unless it's more subtle. So it just looks great. I mean, I like it. I knit the ribbing with a twisted knit stitch, so it's a twisted knit and then a purl, and I'm just doing a simple vanilla sock to show off the dyed aspect of this yarn. Every time I knit socks, I split my yarn into 2 50-gram skeins so that I can carry less yarn around, and I'm storing this in my little handmade pyramid pouch. There's that. And I also started the project I had previously shown off as a planned project using the O-wool fingering in, I'm gonna guess that this is called pollen. And this is the first skein of yarn I ever bought on my first visit to the Knot House yarn shop. And I found that because, it was like a couple years ago that I bought my first skein there, and first and only skein there, and I hadn't yet cast it on, that helped me kind of stay in control while I was in that store. But I finally cast it on, I think even after I went to the Knot House previously. And I've knit a little bit. Knitting the Modern Mucklucks pattern by Andrea Mowry. I am a super fan of Andrea and her pattern designs. I don't knit all of them, and I generally don't knit like the most popular, but I've knit this like 3 other times. I've made one for myself, which are now blown out, my husband, and a friend. I'm wearing now her range shawl that I knit with like a bunch of worsted weight farm yarns. I've knit her white pine sweater, which I never wear because first one went to the thrift store, and the second I accidentally shrunk in the dryer. But I've knit them, and I feel like I'm not on the like train of fade craze, but I love Andrea's work. And this time, because this is not the first time I'm knitting this pattern, I'm pretty familiar with it. I tried something new. I attempted the braided cast on, or I think sometimes referred to as the Tunisian braid. I don't know if those are 2 different things. I did the best I could to find the braided cast on, and this is what I found and did. And I think that the braided cast on perhaps translates better with a higher contrast group of colors. I knew that I was choosing colors without high contrast, at least in value, for this project, and I wanted to try a new cuff because the pattern, it has you just like knit a couple rounds, so you're not, so like the top of the mukluk isn't a cuff at all. It just kind of like rolls over itself a tiny bit, but I find that because my gauge, or because of the patterning, like it kind of holds a different shape around the sides, and so it would kind of curl around the front and the back, but it wouldn't curl along the sides, which was kind of nice because then it didn't curl all the way down your leg. But I just wanted to try a different cast on. So I think I saw that it might have been Dank Fiber who did the braided cast on that I saw and was like, that's a great idea, and executed. And I'll just link to the YouTube video I used to learn to do that. I really did like, even if I didn't do the braided cast on, but I think it might be called like the Turkish cast on, or anyway, it's a cast on where you use 2 colors of yarn. So the stitches on your needle are one color, and then the bottom band is a different color, which I think would be a really nice little accent and a simple way to execute like a extra color into something that doesn't have extra color. Rather than doing like your cast on with your with your end and your working yarn, you're doing a simple knot, a slip knot over the needle, and then you're using the 2 separate colors to do your cast on, and then you just take that slip knot off before you connect in the round, and it gives this, I don't know if you can see it, but it gives this dual cast on row. I love that. I don't know about the braid. I might use the braid again in the future. I probably won't do the braid on a pair of regular socks. I'll probably just do the braid on like boot socks, or maybe not even boot socks, but like house socks like these. I think it's a good application. So I chose to use the yellow as the main color, and or at least I don't remember what is referred to as main color in the pattern because I hardly need to check the chart for this. That's one thing about this pattern, is that it is simple enough that you don't have to reference the chart after a few rows. But I mean, I'm still referencing the chart a little bit, and this is like the 4th time I've done it, but it's just really, it's like you want to keep going. You want to keep going until you reach the peak of, it's just a really fun pattern to knit. I can't say enough about this. Also, this is worsted weight superwash. So the oval is not superwash, it's something else that's probably really close to superwash. It definitely feels like it, which I enjoy. I wanted a yarn that kind of matched this very superwash yarn. I think this has some cashmere in it, or maybe just merino nylon, but it's super springy. It's like the springiest yarn ever. And it doesn't have a ton of elasticity like regular wool does, but it's just like, it like blooms and bounces and springs. It like wants to spring off my needles. And I like the way that the variegated yarn plays in the background. I think I like it better in the background than the foreground. So when I start knitting this in the dark, the 2 colors look almost the same. It's really not easy to knit in the dark. But so far I haven't made any mistakes with this pattern, which I'm grateful for. And this is the first time I'm knitting mukluks on size 9-inch circular needles. I've always knit them using the magic loop method on, I would guess, a pair of like 24-inch circulars or 32-inch circulars, and this is way faster, like a lot faster, and I'm really enjoying it. I thought that maybe that the sides where the 2 stitches are the same colors together, I thought that they wouldn't kind of pull in the same way without being, magic looped in that area, but they kind of do because of the nature of the carrying the yarn. All right, so anyway, I hope these are kind of just a background project to pick up and carry when I want something interesting but not large. And the previous socks I showed you are my like take anywhere, can do anywhere project. Now that I'm like stuck at the heels. I'm at heel station waiting for the train out of town on these. So I have an idea for knitting this project. So when they asked me at the counter, oh, what do you plan to do with this? I was like, I'm gonna knit a pair of socks. And they're like, socks? Like they're not sock knitters in that store. They're like all about the garments, which I appreciate because I love shawls, I love garments. But I bought Andrea Mowry's Toku socks pattern. It's her first, well, I guess the mucklucks, they don't really count as a sock, but this is the first Andrea Mowry sock pattern I bought, and she uses a yarn that I couldn't find anywhere, and I don't really want to buy yarn online at the moment, so when I saw this and I wanted to buy just a skein of it, I thought I could at least knit socks, and that's a project that is completed in a single skein. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, what else do I already own that would work well with the skein? And I had pulled out of my drawer these 2 skeins of Abundant Earth Fiber, Joseph and Ani. This is in the pepper colorway, and it is 100 grams and 360 yards. And it's merino wool mixed with a little bit of targhee to give it the gray color. And this is, I think, the second batch that they spun of this base. The first was one that I used in another sweater I've made in the oatmeal colorway. And I actually won these skeins by submitting a photo of a finished object made in this yarn. So I'm super grateful to own this. And this yarn is milled in Washington State. And I know that one time when Spin Cycle Yarns got into a jam with their pin drafter at their mill, they called on Abundant Earth Fiber to like help them process some of their roving. So I kind of think of this as like a sister squad of skeins. And then because I'm always trying to knit garments, although this would be a great shawl project, I think. I pulled out this skein of handspun because it has a similar twist to the Spin Cycle yarn, but then it's also like Spin Cycle, a bit variegated, multicolors. This is a handspun from it was a braided fiber that I received in a fiber share package that I was not completely in love with, and so I over dyed it using random colors like ochre and sunshine yellow and olive green, and so it has a very unique depth. I don't think that the colors will stripe in that variegated way that Spin Cycle does. I think it's for the most part rather consistently at a distance, this kind of olivey green. But I think that and this is also only like 85 grams. So this is not a full skein. And I'm wondering, I need to reference my project page for the Stasis pullover that I knit because I used this yarn for it, and I can find out which needle size did I use for that colorwork sweater and how many skeins did I use, because I think that I used 3 skeins in the body and then 1 full skein for the colorwork. So if I think of using this gray as a majority of the body, like maybe up the cuffs or up the bottom, or perhaps down from the yoke, like with a major, amount of that fabric, this could qualify as my body color fabric, and then this would be the extra single skein of color, but it might fall short. I might not have enough color. So another thing I could do is perhaps pull from my stash of DK or Sport or fingering weight yarn that's like my soul color, that's like this color here, that might play off this here. It might, I don't know, it might just be the extra bit I need for detail and color work that will give me the yardage that I'm lacking in this. So that could be like a really fun experimental colorwork sweater. But of course I'm like dreaming about that in every direction, and I'm just like I'm refusing to attempt. I'm just like not even considering it when I sit down to cast on a project. Because, you know, little projects are nice to kind of throw in the mix between garments, and I think that what I'll do is just sketch some stuff. Maybe I should throw a sketchbook into my backpack to come up with some ideas, rather than like just focusing on the socks or whatever's in the background, so that I can finally get going on one of these color work projects. And it would be helpful to maybe snip off a sample to keep in my notebook of my colors, and you know, pull out some colored pencils to kind of play with color and color work. So hopefully that'll happen. Some sketching. It's Tuesday again. It's now 11:30. I have to leave for work in an hour, so I'm going to edit this video. I'm going to upload it today or tomorrow, and I'm going to call it quits. I want to thank you for watching and checking in with me. I really struggle with the thank you, like the hello, welcome, thank you. I feel like there are videos that I watch and adore, and I simply love the way they welcome you in and welcome you as a part of this thing. And I don't even think about doing that until the very end, and then I like stutter and freeze. Because I want to feel welcome, and I want to get right into the knitting. And so I have a tendency to rush right in. And if that made you feel less welcome, then I'm sorry. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate knowing that people are on the internet, like all about knitting and like ready to hang out through the screen in front of ourselves. I hope you have a great day. If you want to connect with me online, you can find me on Ravelry or Instagram as Taylor E. Owen. I'll put that on the screen below so you know how that's spelled. And feel free to leave a comment, like, share this video, do what you want. I hope you have a great day and take care.